let's try to move on. So empathy, today's topic, we'll have the usual starting point of gauging your knowledge level, then go take a look what empathy means, what is emotional intelligence. And there's a funny thing called return on empathy. Like, okay, so next move on. So let me first ask you a question that any idea if you can share without researching in Google. I can't see if any of you are opening Google. Please don't do that. What is empathy? Anybody can share? I'm sure Kakuli would know that probably. So if please reply at the last. I would like to hear from others. And maybe Debojyoti, you might also know. I'm not sure, but let others give a chance. So Otonu Bibhash Tuhin, do you know what is empathy? Any idea?
Understanding the feeling of others.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. In a given situation.
So how does it differ from sympathy? How does it differ from sympathy? No worries. If you're not clear, that is the objective, that today we'll learn something new. Okay. How about Otonu Tuhin? Any idea?
Yes, basic empathy. নিজেকে অন্যের পজিশনে বসিয়ে তো thinking basically or understanding.
Okay, one step closer, definitely better. You're closer.
Yeah, and sympathy. So, do you need definition of sympathy? What is sympathy?
Sympathy. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So sympathy, which basically
very fine start. So let us just move on. So we're introducing empathy and emotional intelligence. This is the part 1, and in part 2 we'll see the methods and steps how to do that. So let's start with a situation. Think about it. Take a look at this situation. Your customer uses a product built by you that integrates a third-party tool. Okay, you're using Microsoft or whatever, IBM product or Oracle or whatever. Okay, on a particular day, this third-party tool crashes or shows some issues, because of which the customer is unable to complete his critical task. Obviously, it's not your fault because a third-party tool crashed. The customer, who is the end user of your product, doesn't understand or know which tool is built by whom. He just sees an integrated thing and he knows it has come from Mole IT or from your team. Now, since you're the main point of contact, because you could be a business manager or customer support or tech support or project manager or whatever, known to the customer, you get a call from the upset or angry customer about the operation failure due to a system issue in the product. Because he doesn't understand like who has made what. He is unable to complete the transaction or operation because something has failed. So he sees that there's a system issue in the product delivered by your company. He doesn't understand all these nitty-gritties of who has built what. Scenario 1, you figure out that the entire issue is with a third-party tool and there is nothing you can do about it. So you just want to rub off your shoulder or hath dhue fela jake bole, apart from informing the third-party vendor and raising a ticket. So you advise the customer that please wait until a third-party vendor fixes the issue on their end, and then I'll get back to you. So there is nothing wrong about it. Very right thing, that it's not your fault. You can't do anything. You can't fix it. You have informed the third-party tool. You're communicating with them, and you have just said that okay, please wait. There's nothing we can do. Perfectly, it's a Microsoft issue or whatever Oracle issue. You have to wait. Now, scenario 2. Even though the issue is with an external vendor, you deeply apologize for the inconvenience. You try to offer alternative workaround, even if that requires you to do additional work. You liaise with the external party for the fix and constantly provide updates to the customer. So the question is, very simple, obvious question. If you were the customer, which scenario would you have preferred? You always would prefer scenario 2, right?
Of course, right.
Now, when we are a customer, we always would like this kind of a treatment. Now think about if you're the vendor, if on the other side there's a customer, wouldn't they also require or expect this scenario 2? They would.
Yes.
So how does this thing come? So if you are on the receiving end, you want the vendor to behave in certain way. Now, when the table has turned, if you're on the other side, The customer also would want that kind of a behavior, which is a normal human behavior. So isn't it your responsibility to respond to that? Probably yes. How does that come? So that is where this is the starting point of today's discussion. Now, this is actually coming from empathy. So that is what we're going to take a look. The difference between providing an average level and excellent level is walking that extra mile. Unless you're walking that extra mile, you can't get an excellent level. You would be tagged as like a poor or an average level. So you have to walk that extra mile to deliver a positive brand experience. The fuel. Now here is the thing. So where would this, how will you get that extra mile effort that you're walking that extra mile? So you need a fuel in order to walk that extra mile. So this fuel comes from empathy. So if you're empathetic, or if you have the empathy in you, you would always want to go that extra mile to satisfy your whoever, customer, or stakeholders or employees, subordinates, personal relationships. It has to come from within. It cannot be just guided by some set of rules or regulations or guidelines. No, it has to come from within, some extra jump. That is what is required. Because if we again look into,
Orko, can I share my little experience here?
Definitely.
I'm not sure what exactly I mean.
Camera on. Yes, please.
Oh, sure.
Definitely.
Now I can completely connect to you. Let me to share my experience.
Very good. I really appreciate when if you're sharing this thing without being asked. Definitely. Go ahead, please.
Yes, it's all about empathy, sympathy, and return on empathy. So let me to share my recent past experience.
Return of empathy to our dialogue.
No, exactly. Now I can connect to you.
Okay, thank you.
Now what happened? We have a enterprise support agreement, premium support agreement for Microsoft. Okay, we pay a huge amount to Microsoft.
Thank you so much, Vivash. So this, let's take a very formal definition of what is empathy. Empathy, by now you're already clear. But as I mentioned, that this is, I mean, we are now getting into a more structured, more formal way of defining empathy. Empathy has 3 blocks. One is stepping into, arthat, bhitor dhoka. What? It is an art and skill of putting yourself in another person's shoes or a situation that you all have said that, yes, stepping into that situation, the other person's. Second is relate. Shudu stepping korle hobe na. I just step into somebody, oh yeah, he's feeling very bad, but then relate others' emotions and problems, relate to. So you should be able to understand what they are going through and relate that. And then there's a third thing, guide. What guide? Use that understanding to guide your course of action. Just to be clear, empathy is part of your emotional intelligence. Okay, it's a subset. So this is a diagram that I found in that empathy is not the same as sympathy. These 2 pictures very clearly distinguish what on the left hand side, the sympathy. It says that it's feeling pity without truly understanding others' feelings, right? Example, we can see on the right hand side that sympathy example on the extreme right. I feel so sorry for you. Yeah, it is. I feel bad about you, but I don't do anything. Do I do anything about it? No. Empathy, putting yourself in another person's shoes. And the example here is that, okay, I see that you're sad, but how can I help? That is the difference between empathy and sympathy. So now the return on empathy. So what we'll see in return on empathy, very similar to return of investment in moto. If you're investing in empathy, there are 3 different entities. Okay, so we'll see some entities on the left, extreme left. On the extreme right, we'll see that how the returns come, and the middle column actually shows that what the entity expects in terms of empathy, which means how you will fulfill the need so that the return comes. Okay, so basically the middle part is connecting the 2 sides of the bridge. So first entity is your shareholders or stakeholders or investors, because every shareholder, stakeholder means actually who's investing either in a relationship or in a project or investment. So the need is that if you can understand their fear, what is the biggest fear? The biggest fear is insecurity about return of investment. even if, let's say, all of us probably do a lot of investments, right, in mutual funds or fixed deposits or SIP, or even like an investor, he does investing in equities or bonds or shares, or even companies like the private equity, or let's say the venture capitals. And lastly, social duties. Well, this is not under the business, but because we're talking about empathy, I think we can't ignore the social thing, that, well, thinking beyond, like if you can think what is helpful versus harmful for the bigger society, with just don't restrict yourself to your part. What you would have is a better living condition. Okay, so any question on this particular ROE?
Orko, I don't have any question, just one simple observation based on my understanding of empathy. I may be wrong also, but everything cannot be associated with return, so that is my, especially when you are doing some empathy in a non-business context, say there is a street dog who is hard, he cannot walk, blood oozing out, pus formation, something like that. 99% people will not touch that, but there would be again 1% people who will be probably taking the street dog in a rickshaw and taking to a veterinary doctor, So there is also a kind of empathy, the feelings that, okay, this dog is hurt, he's feeling a pain within himself, and they need some kind of expecting the support from others. So at that point of time, you are trying to understand the feeling of the pain that the dog is going through, empathizing on that, and you are taking it for a better, life. So
that is what falls under the last category. You'll see, Debojyoti, you have exactly pointed out what the return means. What happens is a better living condition all around us. We're talking about society. So the moment you're filled with this kind of people who are going beyond the level to help somebody, our entire environment, our society changes. We'll start to live in a better condition. Isn't it?
Yeah, maybe you can categorize it that. Right.
So yeah, see, the thing is that, our basic today's focus should be on the business. I'm not getting into the personal part or the social part, but this is just, I mentioned, because if I don't mention this, it remains a little bit incomplete. But I understand that, please appreciate that today's focus is mostly on the business part. So the first three categories. So how do we actually do empath? How do we practice? How do we, maybe I already do empathy, knowingly or unknowingly, but how can I improve that? So there are some steps and some tools. There are 4 steps. First is prepare your mind by suspending judgment about others. This is something what Kakuli just mentioned. And I said, like, hang on. So let me just come, then you can relate. So this is the first step, preparing your mind. Now you'll already see that on negotiation or influencing. So in all these cases, the first step is prepare your mind, because unless adjust your communication style. We'll see all of them in details very soon. Third, relate to others. How would you relate? By gathering facts. How will you gather facts? We'll come to that later on. So you first prepare your mind. Basically, have a very neutral, let's say, whiteboard. Have it a very white bag without any perception, judgment, your actions. That's the last part. So you have prepared your mind. You adjust the way you're going to speak. You try to gather facts, and then you tune your actions. So in the next few slides, we'll take a look into all these 4 steps, where I have tried to summarize into a chart. Well, I apologize that this is not one of the best charts that I've produced, because tons of text I have to put in a number of blocks in one slide, and it's a decently readable font.
I have one question.
Yes, please.
Say for a leader.
Leader, okay.
Yeah. So what should be the weightage of, emotional intelligence or empathy?
Extremely high. Should be.
Okay.
Because actually there is a case study very soon. Assignment, there will be a case study. See, the thing is that the way I have seen it, if you're a leader and you need to have emotional intelligence, or let's say empathy, from both the sides. Customer, যার জন্য আমি কাজটা করছি, সে তাকে আমি যদি 120% support করতে না পারি, how can I expand my business? On the other hand, যাদের নিয়ে কাজ করছি, তাদের দুঃখ ব্যথা যদি বুঝতে না পারি, what motivates them, what upsets them, if I can't understand, how can I get the best out of them? So I have to, as a leader, I have to change my attitude depending on which side I'm catering to. But at the end of the day, the empathy will be extremely important for a leader to whenever they're connecting with the two different sides. Duto jinish next day korte hobe. This is part 1. It's relatively simple. Eta amra from your part, and you just maybe some your colleague was not punctual, whatever, in spite of repeatedly reminding, and then you saw it from your angle that our team area cholche na, so you fired him or her. So you saw it from your angle. I'm just giving an example. After learning today's chapter, you understand that this was due to lack of application of empathy. So question is, explain how you could have dealt it differently by applying empathy using the tools, concepts, whatever you learned in less than 4 minutes.